To Boardrooms with Dr. Kiran. Today I have Mr. Prakash. He's the group head supply chain projects at Landmark Group. So thanks, Prakash, for making your time to come to this show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. And can you just give a little background about yourself?
Sure. So, I have around 29 years of experience in supply chain and operations. I am a B mechanical engineer and I did my MBA in operations management from Bombay University. Post that, I worked in multiple industrial sectors like FMCG, industrial, then food, etc. And in 2003, I moved to Landmark Group in Dubai. In Landmark Group, I've been multiple roles across the supply chain domain. Starting from a pure logistics role to operations, and right now I'm handling the entire supply chain projects for the group, including the home operations for our home brands.
So you are right now the group head for
group head
supply chain
projects.
So what are the job role involved?
So when you say supply chain projects, it could be any project from an infrastructure transformation. You're building, distribution centers, automation. It could be a digitalization or transformation project, maybe on the e-commerce side or on the planning side. It could be a project on inventory, for example, our global trade management, which is a visibility transformation project. It could be that. So anything related to supply chain transformation, from infrastructure to technology to applications.
So it all about the supply chain for the benefit of the students who watch. So what exactly, according to you, is a supply chain management?
Yeah, to put it very simply, supply chain is about the flow of, say, goods and services, right from your supplier to your end customer. And this flow sort of encompasses a lot of things. One is the material flow, other is the information flow, then there's a financial flow. And also it's interconnected with various channel partners. So right from your suppliers, your freight forwarders, your logistics service providers, then you have your own distribution network or distribution channel, which could consist of DCs, fulfillment centers, and then your end customer. So it's basically design, planning, execution of this entire chain, so that you make your product available to the customer. That would be supply chain in a very simplistic sense.
So you told a lot of components in that, in terms of manufacturer, the transportation, the warehousing, the systems in place. So with so much of and these people can be in different places. Considering today's a globalized world, you must be sourcing from some in different parts of the world, then consolidating it in one area. Shipping is another thing. So considering these complexity of components within your operation, how challenging is supply chain logistics?
Yeah, it's very, very challenging because it's a very extended supply chain, and because we are in the Middle East, we don't manufacture much. And Landmark is a retail conglomerate. We are in different verticals, right, from fashion, accessories, furniture, electronics, you name it. And bulk of it we have to source from outside. So our sourcing is from, say, China, Southeast Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. So the supply chain is pretty extensive, and therefore it's subject to a lot of uncertainty. And just to give an example, say from 2020, we have been buffeted by so many black swan events. So when COVID happened, our entire sourcing, was sort of interrupted. And of course, there were problems on the demand side, on the supply side. So on the demand side, the business channels changed, right? Brick and mortar overnight stopped, and our e-commerce shot up. Apart from that, the consumer's changing behavior. I mean, it's so dynamic, and we say in retail that we have to work from the customer backwards. So the changing consumer requirements, the changing channel requirements, and the uncertainties, because of the lockdown, shutdowns, etc., that created a lot of pressure on the demand side. And it was not just COVID. There were, events one after the other. After COVID, there's a Suez Canal, there's shutdowns, there's typhoons, the inflationary pressures. So a lot of problems there. On the supply side, of course, there were even more humongous problems in terms of, so when COVID happened, the demand went down, and absolutely, the freight tanked. But then a lot of these countries, doled out expansionary, fiscal, dole outs. For example, US itself, I think it distributed around $2.3 trillion, give out, to stimulate the economy, and suddenly your demand went up for logistics. So your freight rates crashed through the roof. I mean, they were almost 3x, 4x. Availability was an issue. There were no containers, no ships, and also the US route became very lucrative. So at least to the Middle East, the liners stopped the frequency of the vessels, etc. So your freight shot up, your lead time shot up. Because China and Southeast Asia is a major source, the shutdowns and lockdown affected our sourcing itself. We couldn't manufacture our product in time, and so inventories took a hit. And so when the demand suddenly went up, after COVID, things normalized, the inventories were down, and then to get the merchandise, from these sourcing factories, you had to spend a lot. And of course, if manufacturing became available, then you manufacture and get it, but our cost of doing business shot up, the inward logistics. But that's just one part of it. In terms of the way you do supply chain, manage supply chain in terms of visibility, in terms of tracking your shipment, there was a lot of focus on digitalization and inventory visibility. So those were big challenges, because many of the companies in the region were not prepared. And when this pandemic hit us, they had to compress their entire digital strategy, which was over 2 to 3 years, into 1 or 2 months, because it was a case of survival, right? So a lot of companies struggle. Even in our group, we compressed it, we got going, we managed to get our e-commerce. We had started 10 years back, but this was a different case of business survival. So we had to go up and running, get all our e-commerce infrastructure and channels moving, and make our goods visible to the customer. So a lot of investment in digitalization, which was the biggest challenge we faced. But every crisis has a silver lining. We learn from it. Never waste a crisis. That's what Winston Churchill said. So that's what we did. We enabled a lot of technology application. We went to the digitalization route, and we managed to survive. So problems on the demand side, problems on the supply side, and these are going to continue. Consumer behavior is going to keep on changing. You don't know what he wants next. And on the of course, on the supply side, these vagaries of logistics and uncertainties, right from sourcing, logistics, and how do you move the product. This is going to continue, something or the other. But the way companies are managing is they are trying to get much more agile, adaptive supply chain. For example, sourcing, you can try some local sourcing, nearer to the Middle East for us, for example, Turkey, Egypt, maybe. So adaptive supply chain, which is resilient. Invest in digitalization technologies, so that you are really IT enabled. Focus on an omni-channel environment, at least for retail. You have to be channel agnostic, right? The consumer doesn't care which channel it is. He might, buy from brick and mortar, but expect delivery at home. So we make it completely channel agnostic on the demand and supply side. Sustainability is one more part. Since COVID has hit us, consumer has become much more socially and environmentally conscious. So sustainability is also one pillar we have to focus on. And last but not the least is the social media interconnectedness. So that's the fifth pillar, I would say, for the strategy, where we are hyper communities. So we have to be connected with the consumer so that he's aware of what we are doing, and also be aware of what he wants. So these would be the 5 areas, how companies can address this challenge: digitalization, social media, adaptive supply chain, omni-channel, and of course sustainability. More in perspective of retail, but I think this is applicable for all other industries.
I think so. There's a couple of points. I think it's a very lengthy description you've given about the challenges and how organization, even you give an answer how they can overcome. So one of the things what you told about is sourcing model. You told that initially this China and some of the Asian and Indian subcontinent, and then you start looking at Turkey and Egypt. So an organization has to be adaptive in looking at new avenues to source the material, because at the end of the day the material is not there, customer is not worried, they will go to someone else. So that's one thing you answered. The second thing, when you talk about the visibility, I think the customer at one point of time, if I place an order, I have no option, maybe a phone call, they say 3 days the shipment will come. I'm from a retail delivery point of view. Similarly, from a sourcing point of view, you can also see a lot of visibility is needed. You as a customer when you are sourcing, and me as a customer when I'm buying from you. And their technology played a very important role. So what sort of visibility today or you seen, that you said a lot of investment has been made into this field. So what sort of visibility you are having right now which you didn't have before, and what sort of visibility I as a customer is having right now which I didn't have before if I'm buying from a landmark?
Yeah, so again, from my point of view or from our company point of view, you're right. So you place an order with a supplier, you require entire visibility right from the time he manufactures till the time the product moves through my supply chain. So we had a basic ERPs and our supply chain portal, what we called, which connected our ERP with the supplier. But that's a legacy system. So we are completely revamping our system. We are implementing something called a global trade management, which will give us end-to-end visibility in terms of right from the manufacturing stage. So once the purchase order is is made in the ERP, it gets transferred to this portal, and it's accessed by the supplier himself. And when he manufactures, creates the ASN, all those transactions are visible. Even when he selects the the liner or the freight forwarders, loads the good, the container reaches the port. So all these different nodes are tracked, and also the entire documentation is also done through the system. And then I can track the journey in terms of where the container is, whether it has reached my destination port, and once it reaches the port, it reaches my DC. So this entire and this requires, of course, not only connection with your suppliers, we also are going to connect our freight forwarders and liners, and also our origin consolidation centers, what we call CFS, across China, Bangladesh, India, and Malaysia. We have these CFSs. So it's a one view I have of my merchandise right from the time I place my order, manufactured, ASN done. So I can get a global view, and I can also break down into categories to understand where my merchandise is. So that's one part on the and of course the merchandise is tracked right up to the destination fulfillment center, before it goes to the customer or to the store. From the consumer side, you're right, it has really gained importance because of the e-commerce explosion, right? And if I'm going to use e-commerce as my main channel going ahead, e-commerce maybe was at 3 to 4% for me before COVID. During COVID, it was the only channel. But even post-COVID, post-pandemic, it's at a healthy 15 to 20% depending on which vertical you're talking about. That's because this is a Gulf, brick and mortar or physical store is still a culture, right? Shopping is still a part of the culture and social environment. So people will still go to the malls. But still, brick and mortar is a healthy 15 to 20. E-commerce is healthy 15 to 20%. So, how am I going to expose my inventory to the consumer? So, just to give an example, we have the concept of single view of inventory. So, wherever my inventory is there at an SKU level, I can expose it to the consumer. So, it could be at the DC, it could be at the store, it could be even in transit. Suppose I have a promise which I can make to the customer that I can, if you buy this, I can, reach you within so many XX days. I will expose that inventory. So we have the single view of inventory. So a consumer who gets into the landmark portal will see product available at the DC, available at the store, even some in transit product. So that's the way it is exposed. So what it helps me is, even while making the delivery decision, when he buys product, I can decide whether to pick from store, pick from DC, things like that. So I will look at the overall end-to-end service cost, and then I will take the right decision. So from the consumer point of view, he is talking about convenience and he is talking about access, while buying. So convenience is, of course, we give him all the IT. He can buy through any device, mobile, tablet, you name it, laptop, or even when he goes to a physical store, it's almost become a digital store. Product is not there, the guy will help him on the iPad to choose the product from himself. So access is taken care of, convenience is taken care of. On the delivery side, the systems are fully integrated. He can track and trace the product once he places the order. We have our partners or even our own last mile where we seamlessly connect with the consumer. through the portal, through our website, or through our app, or even through WhatsApp, you name it, any which way he wants. He is fully in track of his product, what's happening. And also on the omni-channel side, in terms of delivery, we can facilitate. He can come and collect it from store, we can send it to his house, parcel locker, you name it. So we make it totally agnostic in terms of delivery, or in terms of buying and delivery, and also from visibility, whichever way he wants, we give him the visibility. So that's how we enabled it.
I think it's moved away just from a product selling to, I mean, whatever you told right now is what the customer touch points are, and if that is not taken care of, customer is not going to come and buy from you.
Absolutely. So these touch points are like the moments of truth, right? That's what they say. And we talk about personalization and seamless experience. These were jargon, say 5 years back, but now without that, you have lost the customer.
So today, all the investments, I think it's got a lot of financial investment to make this seamlessly, from both the ends. I think that's something which you must be proud of, being a project head, implementing these things in your organization.
Yeah.
So from a generic point of view, one of the key challenge, I worked in the industry also, one of the key challenge organizations face is with the inventory management, with the number of SKUs, for example. Now, in your case, I can imagine the number of SKUs Landmark must be managing. There are a lot of organizations who manage 10,000, 15,000, 25,000 SKUs in that way. And end of the day, stock is money. Is money kept in form of a physical in your warehouse.
Yeah.
So the management, the shareholders, or the stakeholders will be more concerned about that. So what is your advice in terms of the best way of managing inventory, so that the inventory is always fresh and there is no much of a dead stock scenario?
Yeah. So retail, it's very dynamic, and of course forecasting is the fountainhead of the whole supply chain process. And we underwent a planning transformation, say 7 to 8 years back. And I think the key to managing inventory is buy right, to whatever extent you can. And to buy the right product, you require strong forecasting and planning systems. So from my perspective, we have to invest in strong forecasting and planning systems. And if I give an example of the retail industry, the planning has to be done at an SKU level or an option level. Option is combination of a style, size, and color, because that's what the customer buys ultimately. So the way to go about it is, we have a very high level merchandise and finance planning, which gives planning at overall budget level. Then there's a location planning where you do country wise, store wise planning. And for fashion, there are two ways how we introduce the product into the market. One is we launch for the season. There's a launch volume which is displayed to the customer or sent to the store. And once the launch is done, then the replenishment algorithm takes over. So for the initial launch, we have our own buying, sourcing, merchandising buyers who do this extensive planning based on the market information, based on the trends, etc. All this information goes into our planning system. And we have modules which do assortment planning, assortment across various stores. Size, profile, pack planning, we go to that level depending on what category of store is A store, B stores, C stores, different pack sizes. So all that is done in the engine, and this starts at least 6 months before the launch. So that whole journey starts at least 6 to 7 months. Once that is done, of course, we have a launch plan, and of course then that sort of gets converted to an order, production order, goes to the supplier, comes. All this is done to the planning system. Once it is launched, then the replenishment triggers, and even replenishment can have a simple min-max, or we can have advanced algorithms based on the rate of sale, dynamic ROS, etc. So all those engines we have built in depending on what SKUs we have. And then we also track the life cycle. We have a product life cycle management. We track the life cycle of all the SKUs, and proactively we mark down. If the SKU is not moving, we start marking it down so that it moves, so that our returns at the end of the season is to a minimum. Another thing from inventory management, what we have done is change of strategies. For fashion, accessories and all, we have centralized the inventory in the free zone. Earlier we used to send the inventory direct to the territories. Then if a particular SKU doesn't sell, it's stuck there, because country to country transfer is very, very, you already lost the margin, right? The logistics has already eaten away your margin, and then it's always at a loss. But now, at least for the replenished part, we centralize it in our automated DC in JAFSA, and then we do a 2-tier replenishment for every country. The store or the customer pulls it from the DC in the local country, and the DC pulls it from my central DC in JAFSA. So that's another level of inventory management, strategy we have used in terms of centralizing at least the fashion. Plus, of course, we have to have visibility. The key to managing inventory is to really know what is where, aging, what to do with your end of season product, how to manage your returns, things like that. So all these strategies are in place, and this is tracked very closely, even in terms of margin management, and that's how overall. And also, because of the e-commerce channel, we have earlier we had the outlets, but now we have special promotions on the e-commerce, old season sale, discount sale, all those strategies we use. At the end of the day, that's charity. So if nothing works, because you cannot keep it, absolutely right, you cannot take a space, cost of warehousing, storage. So these are at a very high level, these are the strategies we